Welcome back to Green Impact Week, where this next 45 minutes will focus on sustainable food for a sustainable future. Obviously, we have to focus on food when we talk about green impact, because ensuring a sustainable food supply or supply of food is one of the major challenges. On one hand, we have to make sure that everyone has something to eat, but we also have to make sure that the planet is safe as such. So food production really is one of the key areas that call for action. The world's population is estimated to reach a 34% increase by 2050. Therefore, we need new methods of production that can feed the world's growing population while using processes and systems that are not polluting and lower the environmental impact and resource allocation. So that's all. We're going to solve all those problems in the next 45 minutes because I have some great people with me up here. My name is Rasmus Tscherning, and I'm with the Creative Business Network. Creative Business Network is a network for creatives around the world in around close to 100 countries by now. And we work on how the creatives and the artists can contribute to growth and innovation in other sectors than their own. So this is also really relevant. With me here up as experts, I have, first of all, Pernille Martiny Modvig. She is the team orchestrator, food and landscape for the Climate-KIC. KIC stands for Knowledge and Innovation Center, and is a long-term EU-funded initiative that Pernille will tell us much more about. It's better that they actually tell us what they do and how they do it. Then we have Rasmus Bjerngaard from Nextfood. Rasmus has founded and led a series of tech companies in Denmark and Silicon Valley, and now he's involved in vertical farming. Rasmus will also expand on his experience when he introduces himself. And then we have, last but not least, Ramin Ebrahimnejad, who is Vice Chair at the Association for Vertical Farming. He's an innovation engineer with experience in agroecology, circular economy, environment impact assessment, and urban food systems. And we will ask Ramin to set the scene and to explain what this is all about. And Ramin, you can start by expanding a bit on your background and then jump into your presentation.
Sure, thank you for inviting me. And
I don't think the microphone is on.
I'm not sure.
Is it on? Yes, it is. Good.
Is it?
Good.
Okay. I'm representing the Association for Vertical Farming, and we are an international network of different solution providers, vertical farming operators, and retailers, and downstream technologies and industries. I'm the association's Nordic representative, and I'm here to talk a bit about the food system in general and how vertical farming can contribute as an innovative solution.
Next slide, please.
Okay. Food system is very complex, and in less than an hour, we cannot cover everything. So mostly we're going to talk about the production side of it, at least I'm going to, and we have to address all of these issues and all these sections all with a systematic thinking. So we need to address all of them to have a better functioning food system. This is agriculture's timeline. Two World Wars had great impact. The First World War, we had the mechanization and the tractors being introduced to agriculture. And after that, the Second World War, we had the Green Revolution, which introduced the agrochemicals to our food system. But now we are in the digital revolution, and we are trying to get the environmental impact of food production down and produce healthier food with high-tech technologies. This is the planetary boundaries. I'm sure you're aware of it. The black dots are showing the impact of agriculture.
Hang on for a second.
Yeah. This is the first time I'm
We're in a tent here in the middle of Copenhagen, so there's a little bit of noise.
The genetic diversity and also biodiversity, the phosphorus and nitrogen cycles, these are all because of the agricultural and the second revolution that we had that introduced agrochemicals. Pesticides, fertilizers, these are harming our planet, as you can see. This is a graph that shows that this is a global issue. On the biodiversity, on land system use, on nitrogen, you can see that Europe is not doing a lot of, it's not doing good on the nitrogen cycles, and the freshwater use, it's going to be even worse than what we have right now. We need to change, and one of the changes is the dietary change. And this is from the Eat Lancet report that shows we have to eat at least 50% of our diets from fresh fruits and vegetables. It still counts for animal products, but in a very lower percentage. And this is the European Union Commission's local food system, which is farm to fork, and it's going to support the move towards more local production of our food. And now, making the case for vertical farming, there is now a greater and faster pace to the industry's growth, and it's because of the urbanization rate, land use change, supply chain discrepancies that we saw during the pandemic, and also demand for better food, because in vertical farming, we are not going to use pesticides or other agrochemicals that I mentioned, and also climate change impacts, which agriculture is both culprit and it's going to get the most impact because of it. We're going to see more frequent wildfires, droughts, flooding, so we have to be prepared for it. And these are the benefits of vertical farming: no pesticide use, circular resource use, so you can recycle the water nutrients so that you do not pollute the environment and use the resources better. And also it's hyper-local because it has to be in urban areas or peri-urban areas. Better flavor because of the light recipes and the nutrient recipes. You can exactly determine what kind of flavor and nutritional value your end product will have. Higher yield based on space, and also production independent of climate. So there is no season involved, and you can grow theoretically everything, but now it's only limited to perishable fresh products, but the berries, cucumbers, tomatoes, and peppers are all being introduced to this new technology. And you can see the new wave of investments, and mostly it's from US, but I'm hoping that we're going to see that in the near future in Europe as well. Okay, that was it.
Thank you very much, Ramin. Now I would like to give the word to Pernille for a brief introduction of what you do, where you're from, and your take on this issue on sustainable food.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Pernille Martiny Modvig, and I'm Danish. Grew up in Jutland in a hippie family with sheep and self-sufficiency and all that kind of stuff. Went to Waldorf school and took chaos pilots. So my background is very off in comparison to the rest of the farming, food, sustainability world. Currently, I work at Climate-KIC, EIT Climate-KIC, which you briefly introduced. Climate-KIC is a knowledge innovation community, and we consist of 300 plus partners, I don't know the numbers right now, which are spread across public organizations like cities or regional governments, and universities or research institutions, and we have private industry. And all of the partners are dedicated to reaching the net zero society by 2030. And we are we're investing some 80 million euro into this area, into innovation and into education and into entrepreneurship projects within areas that are sort of defined within climate change mitigation. What I do here is that I lead a program called Deep Demonstrations of Change, which is focused on systems innovation, and I focus on food systems and landscapes. This program came about because we've been looking back at our portfolio over the past 10, 15 years, and we've seen that despite the massive amounts of money we've spit in there, we haven't seen the change or the impact that would, be equivalent or like pay off that investment, you might say. And the reason we find is that we've been putting a lot of money into single-point innovation, so we've been pushing a lot of tech fixes into the market. So little solutions for this and that, thingies, essentially, apps, whatever. And these solutions, I mean, they can be super valuable, but only if they come in and replace something black in the market. So if they just end up as an extra thing on the shelf, it has no impact. So that's kind of back to the point of Klaus from Danske Bank before, that you have to test your impact before you scale. And so we've decided that we need to change how we innovate and how we invest in things. So we are going to now focus on systems innovation, and we're going to look at whole systems and work with demand. And we're not going to look at pushing tech to the market, but we're going to look at whole systems and sort of see which leverage points there are to sort of affect whole value chains back and forth. So that is kind of the work I've been leading on food. And I've been working with Eat Foundation, who came up with the planetary diet report, the Eat Lancet report, and Stockholm Resilience Center, who was the main research institute behind that. And what we've decided to do is to focus on, or we've identified public meals as one of these areas where we have one sort of orchestrated entity that has the power and the mandate to affect value chains upstream towards the soil. And downstream, better? Okay, and downstream towards the consumer. So what we've done is that we've collected, we thought we might want to work where impact is, so where the, show me the money, kind of. So we've decided to work with the innovation agencies of the Nordics. We start in the Nordics, and then the plan is to scale out from there. So we have collected or gathered the Nordic innovation agencies, such as the Research Council of Norway, Innovation Norway, Mattis, Citra, Vinnova, Doga, those kinds of people, and then also some design agencies and some research institutes. We lack our Danish Innovation Foundation, but otherwise we're full plate. And what we've decided to do is to do a twofold innovation.
Could you just give an example? What is a public meal?
So in Sweden, it would be obvious to use school meals, because Sweden has school meals for all kids, and that's a humongous serving per day, and which affects a lot of children, and which has the power to sort of both be used in a teaching setting, but also to get the kids an experience of plant-based food not being icky, but being...
I remember growing up in Stockholm and getting blood sausage for lunch.
Yes, so something to replace that and to prove that plant-based food can be delicious. Mm-hmm. In Norway, it would be more like elderly home food or kindergarten food, and in Denmark, obviously, kindergarten food is the big one. Hospital food could be one as well. But we're not focusing so much on Denmark yet, because we don't have the Danish partners on board yet, apart from the Nordic Council of Ministers. So anyway, we've decided to look at public meals because we have one orchestrator, the buyer or the procurer, the municipality or the region or whoever does it, and we have the possibility of to affect the end users, so school kids in a Swedish context, for instance, and retail and sort of the kitchens and the demand, so all the way back to the soil, you might say. So that is basically what I work on.
Excellent.
That wasn't too short.
No, that's fine. Fine, Pernille. Thank you. Now, last but not least, Rasmus Bjerngaard.
Does that work? I guess. Yeah, I'm Rasmus Bjerngaard, CEO and co-founder of a company called Nextfood. We do vertical farming. We're all about changing the food supply or the food system from farm to fork through the plant-based food supply system to get better food in terms of taste and nutritional content, and to produce it in a climate sustainable manner. Vertical farming is a great tool for that. You heard a little bit about it already. But it's really just a tool. It's about changing the entire food system. While it's great to do more precise watering, try to reduce here and there in normal farming, we have to also do something more radical. Really, we will not achieve our goals in terms of sustainability without really rethinking how we do things. And I would like to make a little bit of a shout out for that, because we hear a lot about, let's definitely continue removing plastic straws and so on, but we have to go far beyond that. And vertical farming is one of those technologies or platforms where we can radically change the conditions whereupon we build our food system. It's not the only one, it cannot do it alone, but it's something where we can really do that. We've been working on this since 2017. We had our first customers there. We have a number of farms. It's basically a big decentralized farm where we provide all the technology. We provide the knowledge around the technical aspects and the growing of plants as a service. And our partners are running the local farms, having the contact to the final consumption point, and basically operating the manual parts of the farm themselves. So this is very much a different way, and you also heard about digitalization. It's very much a digital way. So you cannot just say, as it's a fact, that our farming, the normal, like outdoor kind of farming, is an industrial way of producing food. You could also say it's even an extraction way of growing food. Actually, farming together with hunting is the least digitized area, least digitized industry, and this is what we are changing. Can we do that? Yes, we can definitely do that. We're very far with that. We save 98% water, more than 75% nutrients. We don't use pesticides. We have no runoffs. And when you then look at 70% of all water usage and 70% of all 70% of all water pollution coming from farming, this is really something that matters. I think we have some good results already, not just us, but the industry. And the prospects of this industry are humongous. So we much more look to internet and computers in the way that things develop rather than actually agriculture. I myself a background in starting different technology companies and as an investor, as a VC in different funds. I'm also from the countryside, grown up as son of a gardener, and my first job was in a nursery, making small plants. So we're not afraid of that part, but really we're coming at it from much more of a technology point. It's not always so romantic. We are not wearing straw hats and growing in the soil, but that's not the case for our current farming either. It's just monoculture, it's one big industry, and we really need to change that in terms of the load we're putting on our climate. So what I will try to put into the debate here is basically the practitioner point of view, maybe also a little bit of the investing point of view if that becomes relevant, and I think that's probably what I can provide.
Excellent. I think all three of you have talked about this system change, and I remember when I studied economics and macroeconomics, there's this example called the Pope and the price of fish. Because for thousands of years, the Catholics were supposed to abstain from meat on Fridays. I don't know if you knew that, but in February 1966, the Pope said, you can eat meat on Fridays. So of course the demand for fish fell and the price as well. You could say this is like one of these single things that you can do that will have a big impact across the whole system. So if we should avoid these, you said pushing technologies that we weren't sure of getting, or having startups that have a great idea, and yes, it would be a great idea if everyone did it. What kind of decisions can we make, whether it's political or religious or whatever, that will suddenly make this tipping in the right direction, that there will be more demand for urban farming, for example? Do you have any ideas of how it can be done? Any of you? Yeah? Pernille?
So I think it's not as simple as one thing you can do, because you have a very complex system that consists of several value chains that are global. We have pricing mechanisms that are global and pushing, from global pricing, and then we have the political interference in the food system, which is heavy in the food system, and then finally.
For good or bad?
I would say bad.
Okay.
Because we have the CAP, for instance, we have other tall.
The CAP is the Common Agricultural Policy.
Yeah.
Of the European Union.
And also the national policy schemes, or like incentives.
That was what Ramin hinted on. After the two world wars, it was this: we need to be self-sufficient in in our supplies, and that's why we're Fortress Europe, and 70% of the EU budget spent on agriculture. I think it's 30 now, but still.
Yeah. But anyway, it's based on land, so this results in land prices being raised artificially high. This results in a push on the farmers to intensify, so they buy more land, because the subsidies come with the land. And in the end, it results in a debt crisis where they're kind of stuck up to here in debt and eternal intensification schemes. So innovation is almost impossible for the farmers on the ground. And then there's also a lack of social security mechanisms to sort of support the farmers whose livelihood depend. It's their home, it's their job, and it's their everything, the farm. So the inclination to do something about it, do something drastic to meet a future change demand is not there, and if it's there, they don't feel that they have the possibility to do anything about it. So I think we have to look at our sort of global incentive structures and look at them to work in a global context for a global community rather than sort of in areas or national states.
Rasmus?
I would actually a little bit naughty here and say I think it's simple and it's complex, but the complexity is really our own complexity. It is as simple as removing those things. That's it, right? Then we're done. Like the new technologies are not even asking for subsidies or support or special conditions. It just asks for not having subsidies and special conditions for the incumbents. And the interesting thing, like it's energy. Energy is super important in all of this, right? And then it's food. Those are the two really big areas. And both are really characterized by huge subsidies because of food security or energy security of the old world. And now there's intrinsic interests and all that. And therefore it's not easy to change. But really it's just not easy because powerful interests are embedded in the system. But it is just remove those subsidies, maybe put in a CO2 tax, and then we're there. Just price things at their fair value to our environment or to all of us, and that's it. And I know that's so often we.
But isn't the challenge, for example, in the EU, then we should all do it, because if Denmark just removed the subsidies, then we'll have.
Yeah, I'm actually not even subscribing to that, but it's true. Yeah, I mean it's always easy to find the difficulties, and then we'll never get anywhere. But what we do if we don't, I mean, there's only one future, right? And that's sustainable. So the only reason we might not do this is because we are basically stupid. Basically because we don't care about our kids. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, it's a little bit maybe controversial to say, but I mean. I'm not trying to be like super opinionated, I'm very apolitical, but I'm just looking at kind of the objective, if you trust in science, I'm just trying to translate what that says. And you can say, I used to do like internet software as a service, and nothing wrong with that. One of the reasons why we started this was really to do something that's important. It's slightly harder than some of the other things, but it's also much more giving. And there's a huge business potential in it. So I definitely think it's definitely possible. Our limitation is really just ourselves. It's our society, but it's really ourselves.
Yeah, but that's still a big one. I mean, if it was as simple, it would be done, right?
I'm not sure we will. I mean, that's the biggest one, probably.
Yeah.
And we may fail, but we can only point at ourselves. So, yeah.
Yeah, Ramin?
I think that what Rasmus is advocating, we are seeing some positive moves.
Yeah, can you hear Ramin? Can you all hear Ramin? No, you can't. Good.
We are seeing some positive moves from EU. For example, in 2018, it was like 80% of the budget went to supporting big ag. And we shouldn't blame the consumer or the farmer because they're doing the best that they can. We have to increase the options that they have, both on practices for outdoor farming, because indoor farming, it's going to be part of the solution, but on other sections of the agricultural landscape, we have to move towards, I'm not sure if you want to call it regenerative agriculture, agroecology, but that needs to happen, and indoor farming, it's going to come in and provide the better food, healthier food near urban areas, and I think that's going to contribute to a more healthy society as well.
But
And I think that just to really give a little nuance, the point is not to advocate for vertical farming on my behalf here, and it's not even saying like we have the solution, not like that, but just to say fundamentally, now you ask about systems, fundamentally that is the problem, that we don't dare go beyond that, right? And until we solve that, we're in trouble. I think one of the things that make me a little bit hopeful here, and I'm pretty optimistic actually, is that there's really things happening, both in the systems, it's always too slow, but also on the commercial side. So there's companies really doing amazing things. So I think we will see some steps ahead, and we can hope that I just don't think that as a society we should bet on somebody coming and helping us from out of the blue.
And I guess for vertical farming, it's difficult for the consumer to identify. It's difficult to say, I only want vegetables that are farmed vertically. There's no such demand, is there?
There is actually.
There is?
Yeah, there is. One of the, now you mentioned this about food in the public system. There's demand there, and because it tastes great, it's great quality, right? So there's just a demand for good
horizontal
quality.
also tastes quite well.
This is better. and by the way, it's not, as you said, Ramin, it's not for everything, right?
No.
Vertical farming is good for some things, but normal agriculture, we are not like against that. It's not either or here.
Oh, yeah.
But the point is that for instance, today in Denmark, you have to have like 90% organic. And because we don't grow in soil, we cannot be recognized as organic, right? Even though that it might be more climate friendly and stuff. So again, you have some structures that limit you. And I'm not saying, again, it's not about, oh yeah, we want to promote that, but I really think we should give space for experimentation. And it may be what we do is the wrong thing and we fail blatantly, right? But we have to give space for new possibilities and not block it before it gets started.
Okay. I'm wondering, because I know that there are certain roads in Copenhagen where we know that the death rate is higher. For example, if you live in Borup Allé, then all things equal, you will more likely the death rate is higher because of the air pollution around that road. Vertical farming is often associated with cities also, urban farming. Should the consumer be hesitant? Can you get over that somehow, that hesitation of... I knew even that I have a lawn at home. I have a house in Brøndshøj, which is part of the city of Copenhagen. And just to plant something on the lawn there instead of having a lawn, I asked some of my friends that are PhDs in air pollution. They were like, no, you shouldn't have raspberries. No, you shouldn't have... So are the consumers ready for the urban farming, and is it safe?
I think if you're talking about the urban farming, which is done outside and it's not indoor farming, yeah, you have a point that if the pollution or water quality is not perfect, you're going to see it in the end product.
And in which big cities is air and water perfect?
Yeah, because in indoor farming, you have control over everything. Practically on the water content, you're going to see the quality level, you're going to control what's in the air, so you can augment, for example, CO2, so that you're going to have better yield, more yield. And I think that if we talk about the chaos theory, it says that if you have a complex system, you cannot control every part of it. But if you limit it to a smaller indoor farm, then you can control everything, and the end product will have less impact on the environment, and the food is going to taste better, it's going to be fresh, because the problem in, for example, Northern Europe is that you're going to have long distance for foods, for example, that have to cover from South Europe to North Europe, and they have to pick it early so they don't taste well, or the shelf life is going to be reduced. So vertical farming can contribute in these areas, I think.
It's funny because often we associate, for example, tomatoes that are done in a greenhouse as less tasty as those that have been out there on the field in Italy or wherever. So do you think either of you, all three, do you think the consumers are ready for changing that notion that actually something that is in a closed system, you're able to get the right taste out? Yes,
we know it for a fact. So this was one of the things we looked quite a lot, because we had the same question when we started out. And totally. as I mentioned a little bit, we are really seeing an ask for it, and then they say like, but we want to use this because we can see it's great for what we need, but we also want that organics whatever stamp because it's good for marketing, right? And then they are in this situation, and the end consumers now we also have produce in retail stores, and people love it, and we're quite surprised how much people know about it, and they understand that you can basically see a plant as an organism that's pre-programmed in its DNA to do certain things, and the environment around the plant is the buttons and levers you can pull and push to make it a great plant or bad plant. So we can also make bad plants, but as Ramin said, we can control it. So we go for the good ones, and we don't see. Of course, there's all kinds of people, but it's not a problem. That is not at all the limiting factor. In fact, we are quite surprised how much is not only in our field, but in general for climate is being pushed by the end consumer. That's really where the push comes from. It's not from the institution and the politicians, or even the companies.
Yeah, because either the politicians and the decision makers have to make some decision that could change the system, like cutting the budget for the agricultural sector.
Maybe a point, Rasmus, also to make, because you said this, is it better? I mean, we can also go the science way and measure it. And we do. We know on an atomar level, we know which chemical compounds are in the plants.
Yeah, but scientific arguments doesn't always go well with the consumer. We can just look at vaccinations, for example.
Yeah,
how obvious, some things that are obvious and scientific evidence proof, it's not necessarily something that consumers
That
can
was
take.
my point, just to take that as well.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, it's mainly the how people perceive it, and that is luckily fitting with the...
I remember, I think it was in February last year, Burger King made a cartoon, Burger King in the US made a cartoon where some kids with cowboy hats were singing a song how cows should eat lemongrass, because if cows eat lemongrass, they don't produce as much methane gas that will then be bad for the environment. And the farmers, it was just, of course not to pressure the consumers, but to pressure the farmers in the US to give lemongrass to the cows. There was a big controversy because this cartoon, I come from the creative industry, so I'm happy that a cartoon can actually have a greater impact than scientific proof, made the farmers react and called it hypocritical and so on. But maybe we need some cartoons and some other stuff to make to explain these things that it works.
Yeah, so I was going to say that the people you're speaking to is probably the already woke kind of group.
Keep the microphone close to your mouth if you turn your head.
Yeah. So I think, and the food system consists of a lot of customers or eaters, you might say, who are not woke at all, who don't give a shit about where the meat comes from. They just need the cheapest meat wherever it comes from. So I think that we have a good need or a big need for something like political campaigns, something about awareness that hits that target group and not the ones who are already vegetarian and grow their own food in their gardens and so on. So I think we need to get those people along with us, because they won't give a shit whether it's organic, if it's grown vertically, where it comes from essentially. So, and that's the majority of the...
Ramin?
And I think, to the point that you're making, and it's different in different regions. For example, in Asia or Far East Asia or US, they don't care. They embrace every new technology. But the problem is that we had it with GMOs. It's a good technology, but the things that they have done, people like Monsanto, it made that technology bad in the image of the end consumer. So if we take the technology and use it for good, I think the consumer will come along the road with us. So the problem with organic is that, for example, in the US, they are getting organic certification if they're growing hydroponically. But if they are a bit more nostalgic feelings about the romanticization of soil and growing in soil, we have to reduce that. And I think that the youth generation is on the road with us. But apart from that, I think Yeah, and also the breeding part for indoor farming, because till now we only bred for the outdoor growth, which was to tolerancy towards drought or salinity. But now we can all of the new breeds are going to be more nutritious and more healthy for us. So the end game would be that the food would act as medicine for us. It's that amount of nutritional value that's in it.
And this will work anywhere in the world. Others, I suppose, I mean, the common agricultural policy was also to, push. The result was worse products at a higher price and poor farmers in Africa, basically. Can we see these vertical farming happening elsewhere than in industrial areas or people? It requires certain skills, right? You need to have a skill set in this, right?
So I have a background in working in Africa for 8 organizations, and this is part of the incentive as well to start here. We think that it needs to be developed here first and then move to Africa. Now remember the numbers correct, but I think it's like 16 out of 20 of the biggest cities in 2050. Like the major part of the big cities, the biggest cities in the world, are going to be in Africa very soon. Yeah. And if you know a little bit about the infrastructure there, you don't need to know very much, that's going to be a real challenge. And really, this is not, to me, it's not about urban or rural. It's much more about new ways of producing our food that doesn't affect the biodiversity and climate so much. And this is just one way, the vertical farm. Now we're a little bit extra represented here, but let's say there was others. There's other people that do great things. And by the way, you said it a little bit, I believe a lot in regenerative agriculture and soil in general. And in those areas, I think we will see, like for instance in Lagos in Nigeria, will be the biggest city in the world. I think we'll see that the solution is that you have farms, and you do, because you have to produce food for all these people, right? Indoor farms.
Yeah, the last place I was before lockdown was Lagos.
Oh yeah?
And that was quite an experience. There is a lot of people there. And but will vertical farming and farming, can that become something could you become self-sufficient? Is it something that the citizens can run themselves, kind of? Is that an option or something you want to roll out?
I can say yes, as a short answer.
Yeah. We can all have our own little stack of something.
I just wanted to just, we were told that we have no more time left.
We have
but I
5
just wanted to state the obvious, that we have to cut down on our animal proteins substantially, because then that would sort of lead us to a more likelihood of self-sufficiency. So that is one of the major things we have to do to...
Why don't we just abolish meat?
And fix the cap?
It's easy. I lived in Brussels in the late 90s, where there was a contamination of all dairy products and all meat and all poultry. So it was possible for, I think it was about 3 weeks, we didn't eat any meat or poultry or have any milk or butter, etc. It's possible, and it's, yeah.
So my dad is 60-some, and he has never eaten meat, and he's the strongest guy I know.
We have a couple of last points here before we're out of time in 3 minutes.
I just want to mention that we have new technologies in plant-based production as well. So there are new plant-based milk, dairy products, and also cultured meat. If that is going to be done right, I'm sure that it has to be financially viable. Then I'm sure that many people would go for that as well. And now we have, for example, in Singapore, it's already on the shelves of supermarkets. It's pricey, but they're producing it. So the future is bright, but we have to have the right regulation for the new technologies to be supported and also implemented. And the consumer is going to make the right decision at the end.
But don't you also need a couple of first movers? Someone that, like Billie Eilish, if she's a vegetarian or vegan, don't you need someone that is out there and says this is the right thing to do, that we go into the homes of Gita Nørby or someone else and suddenly sees that she's self-sufficient in all agricultural products because of what she's doing in her backyard? Or
I think we should push on all the buttons we have. So that is one button, but then we have the policy button and the demand button, which can be driven by using tools like public meals and others. So there's a teaching element and there's a enabling element of the legislation.
Mm.
And I think very much on, I actually don't think we should go for like, you have to do this at home and put that responsibility out with the end consumers. I think we should really push our systems and politicians and so on, because they're slacking a lot. And they're just following the whatever gets them elected. Sorry, I'm being super here. But you know, you get a little bit when you see some of the, it's too slow. And when it becomes like you say one thing and you don't do it, that's really, I mean, look at the Paris agreements and so on. It's not, I think it's pretty obvious, right? And then I think it's really important that we have, of course, some, the usual things, but the systemic change is really necessary.
Maybe also the corporates could push it. We haven't talked at all about the corporates, but there are lots of corporations around the world that have these canteens where they bring in people and they eat. We haven't seen, you know, we are also serving plant-based food in our canteen from either Lego, Rampel, Novo Nordisk, any of these. Wouldn't that be a way forward? Because then they would encounter it at least 5 times a week.
It is starting slowly, but they don't talk about it because you saw what happened when the city of Copenhagen introduced a meat-free day and when everyone went ballistic. So the trick is to just reduce meat and not let anybody know. Then there will be no complaints.
I actually think what the Madhuset has done and what has been done in general in organic has been really good. So I think the whole organic movement has done a lot of really, really smart things. But it's also been over 38 years, right? And what has happened in introducing organic to the public sector, the way they have done it, exactly as you say, Pernille, with more like reducing and explaining the kitchens, how can they buy more of this and then reduce something else so they keep their budgets. I mean, there's many details, right?
Well, we have reached the end of this quick 45 minutes. That was really, really, really interesting, I think. From our 3 speakers here, from Rasmus Bjerngaard, Nextfood, from Pernille Martiny, Modvig, from the Climate-KIC, and from Ramin Ebrahimnejad, who is from the Association of Vertical Farming. Thanks for all of you for staying in here, and stay tuned for what's next in the Green Impact Week. Thanks.